I watched her documentary before she ever became big. I think I seen it on PBS, on Channel 13. You can tell she was a rough. She had anger problems. She was not ladylike. She was nigga boy, tomboy. Nah, and she, nigga, she went through the process and corrected what needed to be corrected to represent what a champ is. She ain't no Layla Ali. None of our new youth are what our old stars used to be. They got their own mind, they got their own identity. So nah, man, homie, they picking on Claressa. And can't nobody whoop her. So
everyone needs to pause for a moment, because what follows is not gossip, not a hot take, and not random internet talk. This is the point where the entire story begins to fall apart. When Charleston White spoke up, he did not shout or chase attention. He exposed things by staying calm. The silence people once called loyalty suddenly felt like an unspoken admission. For years, the public was shown a perfect image. A strong champion, a successful couple, and a love story surrounded by fame, money, and praise. Then Charleston White asked the one question no one else wanted to touch. What if this connection was never about love? What if it was planning, positioning, and image control? What if protecting the brand mattered more than honesty? He did not insult anyone. He did not accuse directly. Instead, he connected facts. He reminded people that Claressa Shields did not come from comfort or polish. She was intense, emotional, and unfiltered. Over time, she was shaped into more than an athlete. She became a product that could not afford controversy. Behind the spotlight, power, money, and control slowly took over. The person beside her was not just a partner, but a gatekeeper. That silence was not accidental. It was intentional. And suddenly, what once looked like romance began to resemble a carefully managed agreement. Because real love does not need this much control or quiet.
So Claressa Shields wants to have babies with Papoose while he's still married to Remy.
They gonna look like African kids, Ugandan babies. Yeah. They ain't gonna know if them babies Nigerian, Jamaican, or Haitian. But they gonna have some pretty chocolate skin. Don't know if their hair gonna be too straight or wavy. They may have African hair. But they sure gonna be nigga kids. Yeah. They gonna be some smart kids that know how to fight.
What made this moment feel so disturbing was not how loud Charleston White spoke. It was how steady he sounded. He talked with focus and clarity, like someone who was not trying to argue, but simply reminding people of details they had chosen to overlook. This was not an angry outburst. It was a reset of the story. Once that shift happened, the public image surrounding Charleston White, Claressa Shields, and Papoose slowly began to fall apart. Charleston never questioned Claressa's skill or hard work. He respected her ability. What he challenged was the system built around her success. He did not deny her achievements. Instead, he asked how tightly those achievements had been guarded. In his view, the biggest danger in modern fame is not losing, but becoming untouchable. When someone is treated as too important to question, real control takes place quietly. He explained that Claressa's rise was not only about strength and discipline. It also involved shaping her image and managing public perception. Not because she lacked talent, but because the brand linked to her could not risk unpredictability. Fans saw dominance and confidence. What they did not see was protection. Opponents were chosen carefully. Risks were minimized behind the scenes. Her public image appeared raw, yet every move was calculated. Charleston then shifted attention away from the ring and toward the people closest to her. He focused on those with access, influence, and the power to block criticism. That is where Papoose entered the conversation. Not as a romantic hero, but as a steady presence in the public story. He stayed quiet, never caused friction, and was always nearby. A figure who never demanded attention, but never disappeared either. Charleston did not say Papoose controlled Claressa. He described something more subtle, a situation where protection and dependence blend together. When someone shields you from criticism, they also decide what you never hear. In that environment, silence is not neutral. It becomes strategy. This is where the relationship stopped looking emotional and started appearing practical. Claressa gained stability, credibility, and insulation from chaos. Papoose gained relevance, access, and renewed visibility. Together, they looked secure. In an industry driven by appearances, security has real value. Remy Ma's absence was also addressed, not loudly but clearly. Charleston suggested it was not coincidence. Remy did not fit into a system that required quiet compliance. She challenged narratives and refused to be managed. And when something cannot be controlled, it gets pushed out. Charleston never accused anyone directly. He simply pointed out patterns. Which voices stay, which disappear, and how usefulness shapes truth. By the end, one thing was clear. This story was never just about boxing. It was about power, image, and silence.
Yeah, that nigga Papoose. And this is why I say that. You ain't never heard no hoe come out and say nothing bad about him first. Even when this hoe was doing wrong, he wasn't running to the internet bashing him. And he don't speak much. He's a man of silence, so that means his words are important to him. I done seen him get with 2 women, and seemed like he brought the best out of both women. Yeah, I don't know too many niggas that go hold their girl down when they go to jail.
That silence was never presented as innocence. It was presented as control. Charleston White suggested that discipline is often confused with moral behavior. When someone never reacts in public, people assume there is nothing wrong. In reality, it can mean that person understands restraint better than anyone else around them. Staying quiet is not always weakness. Sometimes it is strategy. As the discussion continued, the tone grew heavier. Charleston began explaining what happens when a career reaches its highest point, but personal identity stops growing. When public attention fades, staying close to power can become the fastest way to stay relevant. He never claimed that Papoose took advantage of Claressa. Instead, he said opportunity often appears when 2 needs match. One side wants security and protection. The other wants access and visibility. When those interests line up, people call it love because that word feels more comfortable than planning. He argued that Claressa's world slowly changed over time. Boxing became less about taking risks and more about protecting an image. Preserving status started to matter more than pushing limits. In that kind of environment, anyone who asked hard questions was not just disagreeing. They were seen as a threat to the structure holding everything together. Charleston also turned his attention toward the industry itself. He questioned why so many voices that speak about empowerment went silent when real scrutiny appeared. He asked why media outlets repeated safe talking points instead of asking deeper questions. According to him, silence on that level is not neutral. It is cooperation. As he spoke, a clear pattern emerged. Control rarely arrives loudly. It settles in slowly. It disguises itself as care, loyalty, and protection until the person at the center can no longer tell where their freedom ends and the system begins. One of his most uncomfortable points focused on physical damage. Fight after fight, injury after injury creates vulnerability. Vulnerability opens the door to dependence. When the need for stability becomes stronger than the desire for independence, the people closest to you become essential. Not because they empower you, but because life without them feels impossible. Charleston did not describe villains. He described incentives. Then he widened the lens. This was not just about Claressa Shields, Papoose, or Remy Ma. It was about how modern public relationships are built. Who brings value? Who provides protection? Who controls access? Who absorbs risk? And who gets replaced when the balance changes? He reframed the situation clearly. This was not a love story that failed. It was a business-style arrangement doing exactly what it was designed to do until it reaches its limit. When relationships are based on usefulness instead of trust, the collapse is not emotional. It is procedural. The most unsettling part was not what Charleston said, but how much of it suddenly made sense. By the end, the discussion was no longer about personalities. It was about systems. How money, image, and power interact. He described the relationship not as chaotic, but as efficient. And efficiency, he implied, is never romantic. It is intentional, controlled, and designed to reduce risk while maximizing results.
She also makes more money than him, similar to Remy Ma. So would you consider him a gold digger?
No. A player ain't never been a gold digger. That nigga's a player. Nigga had smooth player, nigga. Now, man, now, you always supposed to play for the bank. My grandmama told me, if a woman really like you, it ain't nothing she won't do for you. Well, grandmama, how you know if she really like you? She'll give you her money.
That line didn't land softly, because it changed the meaning of generosity. Instead of sounding like manipulation, it came across as proof. Charleston wasn't saying that money buys love. He was saying love often shows up through support and resources. And when someone has full access to your money in your life without any hesitation, it reveals a lot about who holds the power, whether you want to admit it or not. Then he widened the topic. Charleston argued that people focus too much on who makes more money, and they miss the real issue. The real question isn't income, it's control. Who decides which stories are shared? Who decides when someone should stay quiet? Who chooses when to respond and when to disappear? In that system, silence becomes a kind of currency. He didn't describe quietness as weakness. He described it as a strategy. Loud people burn bridges, while quiet people often end up owning the room. In an industry that thrives on drama, the person who never reacts becomes the hardest target. You can't attack what won't respond. This is where Remy Ma re-enters the story, not emotionally, but structurally. Charleston suggested that Remy represented unpredictability. She spoke whenever she wanted. She didn't hide conflicts or soften the truth for appearances. In an industry obsessed with clean images, unpredictability is seen as a problem. So when the focus shifted away from her, it wasn't about love being lost. It was about risk being removed. Charleston argued that the industry didn't just accept this shift, it benefited from it. Controlled relationships are easier to manage, and simpler stories are easier to sell. When critics speak out, they are often dismissed as bitter or jealous. That reaction isn't planned. It's just how the culture works. The most chilling part was when he talked about how long these arrangements can last. He said relationships built on usefulness don't collapse with a big scandal. They fade quietly. When the value changes, when the protection isn't needed anymore, that's when silence stops working and leaks begin. Truth doesn't usually arrive all at once. It comes in pieces, in inconsistencies, in moments when actions no longer match words. Loyalty starts looking less like devotion and more like obligation. He also connected this to physical strain. Constant fights, injuries, and recovery make someone more emotionally dependent. And emotional dependence creates control. When someone is exhausted and under constant pressure, they stop questioning the system that promises stability. He ended by reframing marriage not as romance, but as a contract. If people treat marriage like feelings instead of planning, it collapses when emotions change. But if a relationship is built like a business, it can survive storms. Otherwise, it breaks when the audience loses interest. That's the uncomfortable truth. If this was never love, then silence wasn't betrayal. It was policy. Policies don't apologize. They end when they're no longer useful. He said something that changed everything that came before it. He suggested most people don't realize they are in a transactional relationship because transactions don't always look like trades. Sometimes they look like favors, protection, or someone shielding you from criticism. Sometimes they look like someone handling the drama while you focus on your performance. But every transaction has a cost. And in this case, the cost was independence. Charleston White implied that Claressa Shields didn't lose her freedom suddenly. It slowly disappeared through decisions that were supposedly for her own good. It happened through limited access, through voices being dismissed as jealous, bitter, or irrelevant before they could even be heard. The most dangerous part of this process is that it feels like safety while it is happening. He also brought up the physical toll. Repeated injuries don't only hurt the body, they affect the mind too. Pain narrows your view, and fatigue lowers your resistance. When someone is tired and in pain, depending on another person starts to feel normal. It feels necessary, especially when someone is there to manage the world for you. At this point, Charleston's talk stopped being about celebrities and started sounding like a warning. He suggested this pattern happens everywhere. In music, sports, politics, anywhere image matters more than truth. Anywhere silence is rewarded. Anywhere questioning the system is seen as betrayal. And once you recognize it, you begin to notice it everywhere. He didn't let the audience off the hook either. He spoke about how fans help keep the system alive. Applause stops people from asking questions. Defending a public image becomes more important than protecting a real person. Questioning the story is treated like hate instead of curiosity. Silence isn't only enforced from the top, it's supported from the bottom. Then the talk moved toward legacy. What happens when the story ends? What remains when the brand no longer needs protection? Charleston said the hardest truth doesn't hit during the peak. It hits after. When the applause fades, when protection ends, and when people finally ask the questions they were told not to ask. By then, the answers matter less than the regret. He ended by returning to marriage, not as romance, but as structure. He said relationships fail when they are based on feelings instead of responsibility. But when they are built on shared duty, they last. The irony is that many people reject the idea of marriage as a contract. Yet they enter relationships that act like one, just without honesty. That's what makes this story unsettling. If it was never love, then no one necessarily did anything wrong. They just played their roles, followed incentives, and kept quiet until silence stopped working. Systems don't collapse from exposure. They collapse from irrelevance. When the cost of keeping them alive becomes too high, the truth leaks out on its own. And once that happens, the illusion can't be repaired. Because what looked like loyalty now feels like obligation. And what was called love suddenly feels like a deal that finally ended.